Dr. Rothfeldena adjusted the neural interface headset for the third time that morning. His crystalline fingers moved with practiced precision across the control panel, each movement casting tiny rainbows through his translucent skin. After 300 years of conducting mental evaluations, the routine had become as natural as breathing. Today would mark his 47th different species tested, and he expected nothing unusual from these newcomers called humans. The evaluation chamber hummed with quiet energy. Banks of monitoring equipment lined the walls, their displays showing readouts that most beings couldn't even pronounce, let alone understand. Roth had designed many of these systems himself during his early years at the Galactic Confederation testing facility. The orbital station Delta 7 was his domain, and mental assessment was his art. His assistant, a young Althari named Senna, handed him the daily roster. "Doctor, your first appointment arrives in 20 minutes. Species designation, human. Subject name, David Park. Occupation listed as engineer?" Roth accepted the datapad without looking up from his calibrations. Engineers were common among new member species. Most civilizations sent their best technical minds for initial evaluation, hoping to impress the Confederation with their intellectual capabilities. It rarely worked. Intelligence and mental resilience were entirely different qualities, and Roth had seen brilliant scientists crumble under the lightest psychic pressure. "Standard protocol?" Senna asked. "Of course. Basic neural mapping, stress tolerance assessment, psychic potential evaluation. Same as always." Roth paused in his work. "What's their preliminary rating?" Senna consulted her notes. Confederation scouts ranked them at 2.1 on the mental resilience scale. No detectable psychic abilities. Technology level rated as primitive but advancing rapidly. A 2.1 rating. Roth almost sighed. The lowest he'd seen in recent memory was 1.8, from a species of floating jellyfish creatures who spent most of their lives in meditative trances. The highest belonged to the Corvan Empire at 7.8, and those warrior philosophers had trained for centuries to achieve such mental discipline. Most species fell somewhere between 3 and 5, respectable but unremarkable. Humans, it seemed, would be another routine evaluation. The chamber door slid open with a soft whisper. David Park walked in, and Roth got his first look at the species that had somehow managed to split atoms and reach their moon within a single century of discovering electricity. The human was average height by galactic standards, with brown hair and curious dark eyes that immediately began scanning the equipment around him. "Fascinating setup you have here," David said, his voice carrying genuine interest rather than nervousness. "Is that a quantum state neural interface? I've read theoretical papers about similar technology, but seeing it in person is incredible." Roth blinked. Most subjects entered his chamber with fear, reverence, or resignation. This human sounded like he was visiting a museum. "You're familiar with neural interface theory?" "Only the basics. We've been working on brain-computer interfaces back home, but nothing nearly this advanced. May I ask how you maintain quantum coherence across biological neural networks? The decoherence rates should be astronomical." For a moment, Roth forgot this was supposed to be an evaluation. The human's questions demonstrated a surprising grasp of principles that took most species centuries to develop. The Althari discovered that crystalline matrix amplifiers can stabilize quantum states in organic neural tissue. "It took us nearly a millennium to perfect the technique." David nodded thoughtfully. "Crystalline matrices. That makes sense. You'd need something that could resonate at neural frequencies while maintaining structural integrity. Very elegant solution." Senna shot Roth a surprised look. In all her years as his assistant, she'd never heard him explain advanced technology to a test subject. Roth cleared his throat and returned to his professional demeanor. "Please take a seat in the evaluation chair. I'll need to attach several monitoring devices before we begin." David settled into the chair with relaxed confidence. He showed no signs of the anxiety that plagued most subjects. As Roth attached the neural sensors, David continued asking questions about the equipment, the testing process, and the scientific principles involved. His curiosity seemed boundless. "This might feel strange at first," Roth warned as he powered up the interface. "I'll be making contact with your mind to assess your mental architecture and stress responses. Try to remain calm and think of peaceful memories." "Mental architecture?" David's eyes lit up with interest. "Are you mapping neural pathways or something deeper? How do you differentiate between conscious and subconscious responses?" Roth paused. No subject had ever asked for technical details about the process itself. Well, it's quite complex. Perhaps we should simply begin. The neural interface came online, and Roth felt the familiar sensation of his consciousness touching another mind. What he found there made him stop completely. Human mental patterns were unlike anything in his extensive experience. Where most species had flowing organic thought structures, David's mind felt organized, deliberately constructed. It reminded Roth of looking at a vast library where every book was precisely cataloged and cross-referenced. But more surprising was the lack of fear. David's mental state remained steady and curious even as Roth's consciousness probed deeper. Most beings experienced instinctive panic when they felt foreign thoughts touching their minds. David seemed to be studying the process with scientific detachment. Remarkable, Roth murmured aloud, forgetting himself. What's remarkable? David asked through the neural link, his mental voice carrying the same eager curiosity as his spoken words. Roth nearly broke the connection in surprise. Subjects weren't supposed to be able to communicate clearly during initial contact. You're quite calm for someone experiencing their first psychic evaluation. It's fascinating. I can feel your thoughts brushing against mine, but it's not intrusive. More like collaborative exploration? Is this how all psychic species communicate? Not exactly, no. Roth tried to regain his professional composure. I'm going to begin the standard stress tests now. You might experience some discomfort. He applied the first level of psychic pressure, equivalent to mild anxiety. David's mental patterns shifted slightly but remained stable. Roth increased the pressure to moderate fear levels. Again, David adapted without breaking. At the third level, something unprecedented happened. Instead of showing strain, David's mind began to analyze the stress patterns themselves. Roth could feel the human consciousness studying his techniques, mapping the psychic pressure points, understanding the methodology. Interesting approach, David commented through the link. You're triggering specific neural responses to test resilience thresholds. But have you considered that the effectiveness might vary based on species-specific fear responses? What works on one type of consciousness might be completely irrelevant to another. Roth stared at his monitoring equipment in disbelief. The readouts showed not just stability, but active adaptation. David's brain was literally rewiring itself in real time to better handle the psychic pressure. After 2 hours of testing, Roth finally disconnected the interface. He felt mentally drained, which had never happened during a routine evaluation. David, meanwhile, looked refreshed and energized. That was incredible, David said, standing and stretching. Thank you for the demonstration. I learned more about psychic mechanics in 2 hours than years of theoretical study could have taught me. Roth watched the human leave, his mind reeling. In 3 centuries of testing 46 different species, he had never encountered anything like David Park. The human had treated the entire evaluation as a learning experience, emerging stronger and more knowledgeable than when he'd entered. As Senna began shutting down the equipment, she glanced at Roth with concern. Doctor, how should I log the results? Roth stared at his data, knowing that everything he understood about mental evaluation had just been challenged by a supposedly primitive species. I need to run more tests. 3 days later, Roth found himself staring at David Park's evaluation results for the 100th time. The data made no sense according to everything he knew about xenopsychology. Sleep had become difficult since that first session, his dreams filled with the memory of touching that strangely organized human consciousness. Senna knocked softly on his office door. Doctor, Commander Ithala is here to see you. Commander Ithala entered with her usual military bearing. The Corvan leader's scaled face showed concern as she studied Roth's haggard appearance. You requested an urgent meeting about the human evaluation? Yes, Commander. I need permission to conduct an enhanced mental probe on subject David Park. Roth handed her the preliminary report. These results are unprecedented. Ithala's golden eyes scanned the data. Her species held the record for mental resilience, so she understood the significance of the numbers. A 2.1 species achieving adaptive response patterns? That's impossible. I thought so too, but I witnessed it myself. This human didn't just resist psychic pressure, he studied it. His mind actively improved its defenses while I was testing them. Enhanced probes are reserved for potential psychic threats, Ithala warned. The Confederation Council doesn't approve them lightly. This might be exactly that kind of threat. Not in a malicious sense, but Roth struggled to find the right words. Commander, what if we've been wrong about human capabilities? What if their lack of natural psychic abilities has forced them to develop something else entirely? Ithala considered this. The Corvan Empire had learned never to underestimate seemingly weak opponents. Very well. One enhanced mental probe, but I want full monitoring. If this human shows any signs of hostile psychic potential, we terminate immediately. The next morning, David arrived at the testing chamber with the same eager curiosity as before. He carried a small notebook filled with questions about psychic theory and neural interface technology. Dr. Veldena, I've been thinking about our last session. I have some ideas about improving the efficiency of your stress testing protocols. Would you like to hear them? Roth felt a chill run through his crystalline form. The human had spent 3 days analyzing their testing methods and apparently found ways to improve them. Perhaps, after today's evaluation, I'd like to conduct a deeper assessment this time. Deeper? David's eyes brightened with interest. Excellent. I was hoping we could explore more advanced applications. The enhanced mental probe equipment filled an entire wall of the chamber. Designed to penetrate the minds of trained psychic warriors, it could break through defenses that took centuries to build. Roth had only used it 12 times in his career, and never on an untrained subject. This session will be more intense, Roth warned as he activated the additional neural interfaces. You may experience significant discomfort. Many subjects find the process overwhelming. I understand. Thank you for the opportunity to experience advanced psychic technology firsthand. Roth initiated the connection and immediately felt the difference. The enhanced probe allowed him to dive much deeper into consciousness, past surface thoughts into the fundamental structure of David's mind. What he found there defied everything he thought he knew about human mental architecture. The human consciousness wasn't just organized, it was layered like a sophisticated defensive system. Surface level contained everyday thoughts and memories, exactly what Roth expected. But beneath that lay something extraordinary. The second layer buzzed with rapid tactical thinking. David's mind constantly analyzed his environment, assessed potential threats, and calculated responses to dozens of hypothetical scenarios. This wasn't paranoia. It was systematic preparation for any conceivable challenge. Deeper still, Roth discovered long-term strategic planning that spanned decades. David's consciousness regularly modeled complex future scenarios, adjusting plans based on new information with remarkable flexibility. Most species struggle to think beyond their immediate circumstances, but this human routinely planned for challenges that might not arise for years. At the 4th level, Roth encountered something that made him pause. Primal survival instincts mixed seamlessly with sophisticated risk calculation. David's mind treated every problem, no matter how abstract, as a survival challenge to be overcome through intelligence and determination. But the deepest level nearly made Roth break the connection entirely. At David's core burned something that had no equivalent in any species Roth had encountered. It wasn't just determination or curiosity. It was an absolute refusal to accept limitations. David's fundamental nature viewed every obstacle as temporary. Every impossibility as merely a problem that hadn't been solved yet. This is fascinating, David commented through the neural link. His mental voice completely steady despite the unprecedented depth of psychic contact. I can feel you exploring different levels of consciousness. Are these natural layers or do they develop through experience? Roth struggled to maintain his professional composure. Most beings don't have such distinct layers. Your mental structure is highly unusual. Really? I thought everyone's minds worked this way. How do other species handle complex problem solving without parallel processing systems? Parallel processing systems. David was describing his own consciousness as if it were a sophisticated computer network. Roth pushed deeper, using techniques that would shatter most minds, and found that David was right. The human brain was running multiple independent analysis threads simultaneously, each focused on different aspects of his current situation. One thread monitored the psychic contact for potential dangers. Another studied Roth's techniques to understand psychic mechanics. A third analyzed the enhanced probe equipment to determine how it might be improved. A fourth worked on completely unrelated engineering problems from David's normal job. Your mind is doing 4 different things at once, Roth said in amazement. 4? Actually, I count 7 active processes right now. Why is that unusual? 7. Roth had to manually count them through the neural link to confirm David was right. The human consciousness was casually handling more simultaneous mental tasks than some artificial intelligence systems. But what disturbed Roth most was David's reaction to the enhanced probe itself. Instead of experiencing the intended stress, David was treating the entire process as an educational opportunity. He asked questions about psychic theory through the neural link while simultaneously analyzing Roth's mental patterns. Dr. Veldena, I hope you don't mind me asking, but how does psychic ability actually work? I can sense some kind of quantum field interaction, but the mechanics aren't clear to me. Mind still connected to David's consciousness, Roth found himself involuntarily sharing theoretical knowledge about psychic phenomena. It was like trying to hide information from a friendly but relentlessly curious student who absorbed every detail instantly. Quantum field interaction is correct, Roth heard himself explaining. Consciousness can influence probability matrices at the subatomic level through focused mental energy. That makes sense. So psychic abilities are essentially applied quantum mechanics using biological neural networks as processing centers. Elegant. Have you experimented with technological amplification of these effects? The conversation continued for hours. David absorbed advanced psychic theory while demonstrating mental resilience that shattered every scale Roth had ever used. More disturbing, the human began offering insights that Roth's own species hadn't considered in centuries of psychic research. When Roth finally disconnected the enhanced probe, he realized that David had emerged from the session, not just unharmed, but visibly excited by what he'd learned. The human immediately began sketching diagrams in his notebook, working out applications for psychic technology that Roth hadn't imagined. Thank you, Dr. Veldena. That was incredibly educational. I think I understand now why human mental patterns seem unusual to psychic species. We've developed consciousness architecture optimized for problem-solving rather than psychic communion. Roth watched David leave the chamber, still energized and curious after an experience that should have left him exhausted. For the first time in 3 centuries, Roth questioned whether he truly understood consciousness at all. Later that evening, as he compiled his report, Roth realized something that chilled him to his crystalline core. David Park wasn't an exceptional human. According to the preliminary cultural data, he was completely ordinary by his species' standards. If this was what humans considered normal mental capability, Roth wondered what their actual geniuses might be like. Commander Ithala reviewed the enhanced probe results with growing unease. Her scaled fingers traced the data patterns on the holographic display, while Roth waited nervously in her office. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled slowly past as the orbital station continued its patrol route. These readings can't be accurate, she said finally. No untrained mind achieves this level of complexity during enhanced evaluation. I've checked the equipment 3 times, Roth replied. Everything functioned perfectly. The human consciousness simply operates differently than anything we've encountered. Ithala stood and paced to the viewport. The Corvan Empire had built its reputation on military excellence and mental discipline. Their warriors trained from childhood to achieve the mental resilience that humans apparently developed naturally. What are you requesting this time, Doctor? Military-grade deep probe authorization. I need to understand how deep this human mental architecture extends. Deep probe? Ithala turned sharply. That procedure is designed to break enemy agents and extract classified information. It's been used on trained military interrogators and enhanced soldiers. You want to use it on a civilian engineer? Based on my observations, this civilian engineer has already demonstrated mental capabilities that exceed our military standards. I believe David Park represents something unprecedented, and the Confederation needs to understand what we're dealing with. Ithala considered the implications. Deep probe authorization required approval from the High Council, but recent reports from human space suggested rapid technological advancement that had surprised Confederation analysts. Perhaps their mental capabilities were equally unexpected. I'll grant temporary authorization, but with full medical monitoring. If this human shows any signs of mental breakdown, you terminate immediately. We can't be responsible for permanently damaging a member species representative. 2 days later, David arrived for his 3rd session carrying an even thicker notebook. He'd apparently spent the intervening time researching everything he could find about Confederation psychic technology and had developed numerous theories about potential improvements. Dr. Valdena, I've been thinking about quantum coherence in biological neural networks. David began before Roth could speak. Have you considered using crystalline resonance matrices to create stable psychic link networks between multiple minds? The applications for collaborative problem-solving could be revolutionary. Roth felt that familiar chill again. David had independently theorized advanced psychic techniques that some Confederation species had spent millennia developing. That's quite innovative thinking. Oh, that's just the beginning. I've sketched out at least 20 potential applications for psychic technology that could revolutionize everything from interstellar communication to complex engineering projects. Would you like to see my notes? Perhaps after today's session, I'll be conducting our most advanced evaluation protocol. David's eyes lit up with anticipation. Excellent! I'm looking forward to experiencing the full range of psychic assessment capabilities. The deep probe chamber resembled a military interrogation facility more than a medical testing room. Banks of specialized equipment lined the walls, designed to penetrate mental defenses that had been hardened through decades of training. Warning displays flickered with cautions about psychological damage and permanent mental trauma. David, I need to warn you that this procedure is extremely intense, Roth said as he activated the military-grade neural interfaces. It's designed to overcome the mental defenses of trained psychic warriors. The experience can be traumatic. I understand the risks. But think of what we might learn about human psychic species' mental compatibility. The scientific value alone justifies some discomfort. Roth initiated the deep probe and immediately realized he'd made a terrible mistake. The human consciousness didn't just have layers, it had architecture. Complex, deliberate, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. As Roth's enhanced psychic abilities penetrated deeper into David's mind, he discovered mental structures that shouldn't exist in a non-psychic species. At the deepest levels, David's consciousness resembled a vast fortress, not built for defense against psychic attack, because humans had never encountered such threats, but constructed for something far more disturbing: absolute problem-solving efficiency. Every human memory was cross-indexed and available for instant recall. Every skill was broken down into component parts and stored for rapid recombination. Every experience was analyzed for potential future application. David's mind wasn't just organized, it was optimized for learning and adaptation on a scale that made Roth's own crystalline consciousness seem primitive. But the most shocking discovery came when Roth reached what should have been the deepest accessible level of human consciousness. Instead of finding the core identity he expected, he discovered another layer entirely, one that began analyzing him. Fascinating, David commented through the deep probe link. Your psychic abilities operate through controlled quantum field manipulation, but the energy requirements must be enormous. How do you maintain stable psychic contact across multiple subjects without depleting your neural resources? Roth found himself answering before he could stop himself. The deep probe connection worked both ways, and David's consciousness was actively studying his techniques while experiencing them. We use crystalline matrix amplification to distribute the energy load across multiple neural centers. Ah, that's clever. But have you considered using resonance cascading to amplify the effect? You could probably triple your efficiency with some modifications to the field harmonics. Triple efficiency. David was casually suggesting improvements to technology that represented the pinnacle of Althari psychic science. Worse, Roth could see through the neural link that David's suggestions were not only feasible but elegant in their simplicity. How do you know about resonance cascading? Roth asked, struggling to maintain control of the probe. Basic wave physics. If you're using quantum field manipulation, the same principles that govern any energy amplification system should apply. It's just a matter of finding the right harmonic frequencies. Just a matter. David was describing centuries of Althari research as if it were an undergraduate physics problem. As the deep probe continued, Roth discovered that David's mind contained not just one consciousness, but multiple specialized processing systems working in perfect coordination. One system handled immediate sensory input and threat assessment. Another focused on long-term planning and strategic thinking. A third ran continuous background analysis of everything David encountered, building detailed models of how the universe worked. And beneath them all, something that made Roth's crystalline form actually shiver. David's core consciousness treated the entire deep probe as just another puzzle to be solved. Dr. Veldena, I'm detecting some instability in your psychic field projection. Are you experiencing fatigue? This process must be extremely demanding for the examiner. Roth was indeed experiencing fatigue, but not the kind David meant. The human consciousness was so alien, so relentlessly logical and curious that maintaining contact with it was mentally exhausting. David approached every aspect of the evaluation with scientific detachment, including analyzing Roth's own mental state through the neural link. I'm beginning to understand why humans developed such unusual mental architecture, David continued. Without natural psychic abilities, you had to optimize for pure intellectual problem solving. It's actually quite elegant. Every cognitive resource focused on understanding and manipulating the physical universe rather than communicating with other minds. David was psychoanalyzing his own species through the deep probe while simultaneously experiencing it. Roth had never encountered anything like this level of metacognitive awareness. But what truly terrified Roth was David's casual mention of potential improvements to the deep probe itself. Through the neural link, the human consciousness was studying Confederation psychic techniques and identifying ways to enhance them that Roth's people hadn't considered in 3 millennia of development. Have you experimented with multidimensional field projection? David asked. If you could establish psychic contact through higher dimensional space, you might be able to bypass most mental defenses entirely. Higher dimensional psychic contact. The theoretical framework existed in Althari science, but they'd never successfully implemented it. David was proposing it as if it were an obvious next step. When Roth finally terminated the deep probe after 8 hours, he was mentally and physically exhausted. David, meanwhile, had filled several pages of his notebook with diagrams and equations related to psychic technology improvements. Thank you, Dr. Veldena. That was the most educational experience of my life. I think I understand now how psychic species developed such sophisticated consciousness manipulation techniques. It's really quite brilliant. As David left the chamber, still energized and curious, Roth realized that everything the Confederation believed about consciousness, intelligence and mental capability might be fundamentally wrong. Humans had developed not psychic abilities, but something potentially far more dangerous. Minds capable of understanding and improving any system they encountered, including systems designed by species with millennia more experience. Roth began composing his report with shaking hands, knowing that David Park represented either the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat the Confederation had ever encountered. Roth spent 2 sleepless nights reviewing the deep probe data before admitting to himself that he was afraid, not just concerned or puzzled, but genuinely terrified of what he discovered in David Park's consciousness. The human mind wasn't just alien, it was actively dangerous to examine. Senna found him in the evaluation chamber at dawn, running diagnostic checks on equipment that had already been tested dozens of times. Doctor, you haven't left this room in 18 hours. The next human subject arrives in 2 hours. Cancel the appointment, Roth said without looking up from his console. Cancel all human evaluations until further notice. Sir, the Confederation Council specifically requested accelerated processing of human applications. They want the entire species evaluated within 6 months. Roth finally turned to face his assistant. Senna stepped back at the sight of his haggard appearance. His normally lustrous crystalline skin had dulled to an unhealthy gray, and his movements seemed sluggish and uncertain. Senna, in 3 centuries of psychic evaluation, have I ever recommended suspending an entire species assessment? No, doctor, never. Then trust me when I say we're dealing with something unprecedented. These humans, Roth struggled to find words for what he'd experienced. They don't just resist psychic examination, they turn it into a learning opportunity. David Park spent 8 hours under military-grade deep probe and emerged with detailed theories about improving our technology. Before Senna could respond, the chamber door opened. David Park walked in carrying his ever-present notebook, now significantly thicker than before. Behind him came a woman Roth didn't recognize, another human with the same alert, curious expression. Dr. Veldena. David called out cheerfully. I hope you don't mind, but I brought a colleague. This is Dr. Sarah Kim, one of our xenopsychology specialists. I've been sharing my experiences with her, and she has some fascinating theories about human psychic species' mental compatibility. Roth felt his crystalline form actually shiver. One human consciousness had nearly overwhelmed him. The thought of dealing with two simultaneously was terrifying. Sarah stepped forward with a professional smile. Dr. Veldena, David has told me so much about your work. I'm particularly interested in your deep probe techniques. I believe our species might have complementary approaches to consciousness exploration. Complementary approaches? Roth managed. Oh yes, David's described your psychic examination methods in detail, and I think we can offer some insights from human psychological research that might enhance your evaluation protocols. We've developed some interesting techniques for deep consciousness analysis using purely technological approaches. Purely technological consciousness analysis. Roth realized with growing horror that humans had apparently developed non-psychic methods for achieving results similar to what his species accomplished through centuries of mental training. I'm afraid today's session will need to be postponed, Roth said quickly. Equipment maintenance issues. David glanced at the perfectly functioning machinery around them. Actually, I noticed some inefficiencies in your neural interface arrays during our last session. Would you like me to suggest some modifications? Sarah's brought some technical specifications that might help. Sarah opened her own notebook, revealing detailed technical diagrams. We've been developing brain-computer interface technology for decades. Some of our approaches might be applicable to your psychic enhancement systems. Roth stared at the diagrams, recognizing immediately that they represented technological solutions to problems his species had solved through psychic ability. Worse, some of the human designs appeared more elegant and efficient than Confederation methods. How did you develop these techniques? He asked. Necessity, Sarah replied. Without natural psychic abilities, we had to find other ways to study consciousness directly. These are actually fairly basic by our standards. We've moved well beyond simple neural interface technology. Beyond neural interfaces? David and Sarah exchanged a look that Roth found deeply unsettling. Dr. Veldena, David said carefully, I think there might be some misconceptions about human technological capabilities. When your scouts evaluated us, they may have underestimated our development level. Our preliminary assessments indicated primitive technology, Roth said weakly. Primitive by galactic standards, perhaps, Sarah agreed. But we specialize in different areas than most spacefaring species. While you developed psychic abilities, we focused on understanding consciousness through scientific analysis. The results are comparable. Roth felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. What exactly do you mean by comparable? Sarah consulted her notebook. Well, David's described your deep probe technique. We have technological methods that achieve similar results. Complete consciousness mapping, memory analysis, psychological profiling. The main difference is that our approaches don't require psychic ability, and they're scalable, David added. We can analyze multiple subjects simultaneously, or even create shared consciousness experiences for research purposes. Scalable consciousness analysis. Multiple simultaneous subjects. Shared consciousness experiences. Roth realized he was listening to descriptions of capabilities that exceeded even advanced Confederation psychic techniques. Would you like a demonstration? Sarah asked brightly. I brought a portable consciousness analysis unit. It's designed for field research, so it's quite compact. She produced a device no larger than a data pad from her bag. Roth stared at it in disbelief. The equivalent Confederation technology filled an entire chamber and required teams of trained psychic specialists to operate. This is impossible, he whispered. Not impossible, David corrected. Just a different approach to the same problems, may we? He gestured toward the evaluation chair. Before Roth could protest, Sarah activated her device. Immediately, every piece of monitoring equipment in the chamber began displaying readings that Roth had never seen before. The human's portable consciousness analyzer was somehow interfacing with his systems and improving their performance in real time. Fascinating, Sarah murmured, studying the enhanced displays. Dr. Veldena, your psychic abilities are remarkable. I'm seeing direct quantum field manipulation at levels our theoretical models said were impossible for biological consciousness. Roth found himself being analyzed by the very species he was supposed to be evaluating. The role reversal was complete and terrifying. How are you doing this? He asked. Standard consciousness mapping protocols, David replied absently, making notes in his book. Sarah, are you seeing the crystalline matrix resonance patterns? This explains how Dr. Valdena maintains psychic contact across species barriers. Yes. And look at these field harmonics. Dr. Valdena, your people have achieved incredibly sophisticated quantum consciousness manipulation. We'd love to exchange research data. Exchange research data. The humans were treating this encounter as a collaborative research opportunity while Roth struggled to understand how his carefully controlled evaluation had turned into him being the subject of study. This is highly irregular, he managed to say. Oh, we're not trying to be intrusive, Sarah assured him, but you've been studying David's consciousness for days. It seems only fair that we learn something about psychic species' mental architecture in return. Fair. The concept struck Roth as fundamentally human. This assumption that knowledge exchange should be reciprocal, that understanding should flow in both directions. Besides, David added, I think our combined approaches could lead to some incredible breakthroughs. Your psychic techniques plus our technological methods could revolutionize consciousness, research across the galaxy. As Roth watched these two humans casually analyze his mind using technology he didn't understand, he realized that everything the Confederation believed about human capabilities was wrong. They weren't a primitive species stumbling into galactic civilization. They were a highly advanced civilization that had simply developed along completely different lines. And now they were here, eager to learn, eager to share, and terrifyingly capable of understanding and improving anything they encountered. Dr. Valdena, Sarah said gently, apparently noticing his distress. Are you all right? Your quantum field pattern suggests significant anxiety. The fact that she could read his emotional state through technological analysis rather than psychic ability somehow made everything worse, I think, Roth said carefully. I need to report these findings to my superiors immediately. Of course, David agreed. And thank you for the learning opportunity. Sarah and I have collected enough data to keep our research teams busy for months. As the two humans left the chamber, still discussing their observations and theories, Roth realized that the hunter had indeed become the hunted. But more troubling was his growing suspicion that the humans weren't trying to hide their capabilities. They simply assumed that consciousness research was naturally collaborative. They'd turned his evaluation into a joint research project without even trying. Commander Ethala read Roth's emergency report 3 times before summoning him to her office. The implications were staggering, but she needed to see the evidence firsthand. As a Corvan military leader, she'd learned never to accept claims about enemy capabilities without direct verification. You're telling me that these humans analyzed your consciousness using portable technology? She asked, her scaled features showing skepticism. They didn't consider it analysis, Roth replied, his crystalline form still dulled with stress. To them it was collaborative research. They assumed knowledge sharing was natural and expected, and their technological capabilities, far beyond what our scouts reported. They've achieved through technology what we accomplished through millennia of psychic evolution, possibly more. Ethala stood and paced to her viewport. Below them, the testing station's docking bays showed increasing human ship traffic. More representatives arriving for evaluation. More opportunities for these beings to study Confederation technology and methods. I want to observe the next evaluation personally, she decided. If these humans represent a potential threat, I need to assess their capabilities directly. Commander, I strongly advise against. That wasn't a request, Doctor. Schedule an evaluation with their most advanced subject. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with. 2 days later, Roth found himself preparing for what he desperately hoped would be his final human evaluation. The subject this time was Dr. Lisa Chen, described in her file as a theoretical physicist specializing in consciousness research and artificial intelligence development. Commander Ethala took position at the observation station, her military training evident in her alert posture and constant environmental scanning. She'd insisted on bringing additional security personnel, though Roth doubted they would be useful against whatever the humans were actually capable of. Lisa entered the chamber with the same confident curiosity Roth had come to associate with her species. She carried not just notebooks but what appeared to be several pieces of compact technological equipment. Dr. Valdena, Commander Ethala. Lisa greeted them professionally.
Thank you for agreeing to this advanced evaluation session.
I understand you'll be conducting your most comprehensive assessment protocol? The nightmare scenario, Roth confirmed reluctantly. It's designed to test absolute psychological limits under extreme stress conditions. Excellent. I've brought some monitoring equipment to record my responses for later analysis. I hope you don't mind. This represents an unprecedented opportunity to study human consciousness under controlled extreme stress. She wanted to study her own mind while it was being subjected to psychological torture. Roth exchanged a horrified glance with Commander Ithala. The nightmare scenario is extremely dangerous, Ithala warned. It's broken the minds of trained military interrogators. We use it only when absolutely necessary. I understand the risks, Lisa replied calmly, but the scientific value is enormous. How often do we get to observe consciousness under these conditions while maintaining objective analysis capability? Maintaining objective analysis capability under extreme psychological stress. Roth wondered if humans understood the concept of normal emotional responses. Very well, he said, activating the nightmare protocol systems. I must warn you that this procedure will subject you to your deepest fears and most traumatic potential experiences. Most subjects require extensive psychological recovery afterward. I appreciate the warning. Shall we begin? Roth initiated the nightmare scenario, prepared to terminate the session at the first sign of psychological breakdown. Instead, what happened was far worse than any breakdown. The nightmare protocol worked by accessing a subject's subconscious fears and amplifying them into overwhelming terror experiences. Roth began with standard human fears, death, isolation, failure, and projected them directly into Lisa's consciousness. Lisa's response was immediate and terrifying. Instead of experiencing fear, she began analyzing the fear constructs themselves. Fascinating. Her voice came through the neural link, completely steady. You're using directed psychological pressure to trigger specific neural response patterns. The precision is remarkable. You're accessing subconscious fear structures directly. She was treating psychological torture as a research opportunity. Roth increased the intensity, projecting scenarios of global catastrophe, personal loss, and existential horror. Lisa's consciousness absorbed each nightmare scenario and immediately began deconstructing it. The fear of extinction is interesting, she observed clinically. You're triggering both individual survival instincts and species-wide preservation drives simultaneously. But the construct structure suggests these nightmares are based on universal psychological patterns rather than species-specific fears. Universal psychological patterns. Lisa was conducting comparative psychology analysis while experiencing nightmares designed to shatter trained minds. Desperate to provoke some kind of normal fear response, Roth accessed the deepest levels of the nightmare protocol. He projected absolute cosmic horror, infinite void, universal meaninglessness, the complete insignificance of consciousness in an empty universe. Lisa's response made his crystalline blood freeze. Oh, you're accessing existential dread patterns. Yes, humans are quite familiar with these concepts. We call it the cosmic perspective. Most of our philosophers and scientists work through these realizations during their education. Work through them. Humans considered cosmic horror a normal part of intellectual development. But I noticed some inefficiencies in your fear projection methods, Lisa continued, her mental voice remaining analytically detached. You're focusing on individual psychological terror, but human consciousness has developed resistance to most of these patterns. Would you like me to show you more effective approaches? Before Roth could respond, something unprecedented happened. Lisa's consciousness began projecting nightmare scenarios back through the neural link, not as attacks, but as educational demonstrations. Roth experienced human fears for the first time, and they were unlike anything in galactic consciousness. The terror of being truly alone in an infinite universe, not for hours or days, but for billions of years. The weight of moral responsibility for decisions that could affect entire civilizations. The crushing awareness that intelligence and consciousness might be rare accidents in a universe that didn't care whether they survived. But worse than the fears themselves was Lisa's casual explanation that these weren't exceptional human terrors, they were baseline anxieties that every human learned to manage. These are the everyday concerns that drove our technological development, she explained while Roth struggled to maintain his sanity. We developed space travel because we were afraid of extinction events. We created artificial intelligence because we were afraid our consciousness might be unique, and therefore responsible for preserving knowledge. We pushed into the galaxy because we were afraid of being alone forever. Afraid of being alone forever. Humans had conquered interstellar space because they were terrified of cosmic isolation. Dr. Veldena, are you experiencing distress? Lisa asked with genuine concern. I'm detecting instability in your psychic projection patterns. Roth was indeed experiencing distress. The human nightmare scenarios were so alien, so fundamentally different from anything he'd encountered, that his consciousness couldn't process them properly. How do you live with these fears? He managed to ask through the neural link. We don't just live with them, we use them as motivation. Every human grows up knowing that the universe is vast, hostile, and indifferent to our survival. But instead of breaking us, it makes us stubborn. We refuse to accept cosmic insignificance. We build civilizations specifically to spite an uncaring universe. To spite an uncaring universe. Lisa was describing her entire species as motivated by a desire to prove cosmic horror wrong through sheer determination. The fears you're projecting are actually quite mild compared to what humans consider normal existential concerns, she continued. Our children learn to cope with the concept of universal heat death before they graduate primary education. Commander Ithala's voice crackled through the communication system. Dr. Veldena, terminate the session immediately. Your vital signs are approaching critical levels. Roth tried to disconnect from the nightmare protocol, but found that Lisa's consciousness had somehow taken partial control of the neural link. Not maliciously. She was simply too interested in the research opportunity to let it end prematurely. Just a few more minutes, please, Lisa requested. I want to test whether humans can improve fear projection efficiency through technological enhancement. I have some theories about combining psychic and technological approaches. She wanted to make psychological torture more effective as a research exercise. With Commander Ithala's security team moving toward emergency disconnection procedures, Roth finally managed to terminate the session. Lisa emerged from the evaluation chair energized and excited, immediately beginning to sketch diagrams and equations related to consciousness manipulation technology. Dr. Veldena, that was extraordinary. Thank you for the opportunity to experience advanced psychic fear projection. I have at least a dozen ideas for improving the efficiency of your nightmare protocols. As Lisa left the chamber, still discussing her research findings with her colleagues, Roth collapsed into his chair. Commander Ithala approached him with an expression of profound concern. Doctor, what exactly did we just witness? A human subjected to our most extreme psychological torture and treated it as an educational opportunity, Roth replied weakly. Then she offered to help us improve our torture methods. Are all humans like this? Roth thought about David Park, Sarah Kim, and now Lisa Chen. 3 completely ordinary humans who had each demonstrated capabilities that exceeded every scale the Confederation used to measure mental resilience. I believe so, Commander. I believe they all are. 14 hours after the nightmare scenario session, Roth sat alone in his office, staring at a blank report template that should have been completed days ago. His hands shook as he tried to find words adequate to describe what he'd discovered about human consciousness. Every official category and classification system seemed inadequate. Through his office viewport, he could see human ships arriving at the station with increasing frequency. More representatives coming for evaluation, more opportunities for his species to encounter minds that operated on principles no one in the Confederation understood. Commander Ithala entered without announcement, carrying a sealed datapad. Her scaled features showed the stress of the past week as clearly as Roth's crystalline form displayed his exhaustion. The High Council is demanding preliminary results, she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. They want to know whether humans represent a threat to Confederation security. What kind of threat? Roth asked. Military, technological, psychological, any kind. The Council is concerned about rapid human advancement and wants to determine appropriate integration protocols. Integration protocols. Roth almost laughed at the absurdity. How did one integrate a species that treated psychological torture as a learning opportunity? Commander, I don't think the Council understands what we're dealing with. These humans aren't just another species requesting membership. They're a civilization that has developed capabilities we didn't know were possible. Explain. Roth activated his desk's holographic display, showing the accumulated data from all human evaluations. The readings were so far outside normal parameters that the visualization systems couldn't properly render them. Look at these mental resilience scores. David Park tested at 11.7 on a scale that previously maxed out at 10. Sarah Kim achieved 12.3. Lisa Chen broke our measurement systems entirely. We literally cannot quantify her psychological resilience using existing metrics. Yathala studied the impossible numbers. Equipment malfunction? I tested that theory extensively. The equipment functions perfectly. Human consciousness simply operates on principles our science hasn't encountered. What principles? Roth pulled up Lisa Chen's evaluation data. They treat every challenge, no matter how overwhelming, as a problem to be solved, rather than a trauma to be endured. When I subjected Dr. Chen to our most extreme psychological pressure, she didn't break down. She analyzed the pressure techniques and offered suggestions for improvement. Improvement of psychological torture methods? Exactly. And she wasn't being malicious or resistant. She was genuinely excited about the research opportunity. Roth switched to David Park's files. David Park spent 3 sessions studying our psychic technology and developed theoretical improvements that our species hasn't achieved in millennia of development. Theoretical improvements based on what knowledge? Basic physics and engineering principles. Humans approach consciousness manipulation as an engineering problem rather than a mystical art. The results are... Roth struggled to find appropriate words. Terrifying in their efficiency. Yathala leaned back in her chair. Are you saying they've reverse-engineered our psychic technology? Worse. They've identified fundamental flaws in our approaches and developed solutions we never considered. Sarah Kim's portable consciousness analyzer achieved results that require our most advanced facility systems. How is that possible? Because we developed psychic abilities through evolutionary adaptation over millions of years. Humans developed consciousness research through scientific analysis over decades. Our methods are elegant but limited by biological constraints. Theirs are crude but infinitely scalable. Yathala was quiet for several minutes, processing the implications. What about their military potential? Roth pulled up psychological profiles from all evaluated humans. Every subject demonstrated the same core characteristics: absolute refusal to accept defeat, treatment of impossible challenges as interesting problems, and ability to adapt and improve under pressure. They don't have superior weapons or technology. They have superior mental architecture. Mental architecture? Human consciousness is organized like a fortress designed for problem-solving, rather than psychic communion. Every human mind contains multiple parallel processing systems, emergency backup protocols, and adaptive response mechanisms. They're not naturally psychic, but they're naturally optimized for understanding and improving any system they encounter. Including our systems? Especially our systems. Humans seem to view complex challenges as opportunities rather than threats. Dr. Chen volunteered for our most extreme psychological evaluation because she wanted to study consciousness under stress conditions. Mr. Park requested additional psychic assessments so he could better understand our technology. Yathala stood and paced to the viewport, watching another human transport dock with the station. What are you recommending in your final report? Roth turned to his report template, still blank after hours of attempted composition. I honestly don't know. Traditional classifications don't apply to humans. They're not a military threat in the conventional sense, but they're potentially the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. Dangerous how? They improve everything they touch. Every human who's visited this station has identified ways to enhance our technology, our procedures, our understanding of consciousness itself. They do this casually, automatically, as a normal part of how they interact with the universe. That sounds beneficial, not dangerous. It would be, if they were the only ones with access to these improvements. But humans share knowledge freely. Every advancement they develop here will be transmitted back to their homeworlds and integrated into their existing technology base. Yathala understood immediately. They're using our evaluation protocols to advance their own capabilities. Not maliciously. They simply assume that knowledge should be shared and improved collaboratively. It's how their minds work. Roth pulled up cultural analysis data. Humans have a concept they call open source development. The idea that complex problems are best solved through collaborative, Improvement by multiple minds working together. They're treating our most classified assessment procedures as open-source development projects? Exactly. And because their consciousness architecture is optimized for learning and adaptation, they're extraordinarily good at it. Ithala returned to her seat with a grim expression. The Council won't want to hear this. The Council needs to hear this. We're not evaluating humans for membership in the Confederation. We're teaching them everything they need to know to surpass us technologically within a generation. Roth finally began typing his official report, knowing that every word would be scrutinized by the highest levels of Confederation leadership. Species Evaluation Report, Humans, Homo sapiens. Mental Resilience Score, Undefined exceeds measurement scales. Psychic Potential, None compensated by technological alternatives. Cognitive Threat Level, Extreme Caution Advised Recommended. Classification, Tier 1 Cognitive Species Summary. Human consciousness operates on principles fundamentally different from all previously evaluated species. Subjects demonstrate unprecedented ability to adapt, learn, and improve under stress conditions. Standard evaluation protocols proved inadequate and potentially counterproductive. Specific concerns. Humans treat psychological stress as learning opportunities. Technological capabilities far exceed preliminary assessments. Natural tendency to analyze and improve any system encountered. Collaborative knowledge sharing may compromise. Confederation technological advantages. Personal addendum. In 3 centuries of evaluation, I have tested warrior philosophers, hive minds, and enhanced superintelligences. None approached mental assessment as a collaborative research opportunity. None emerged from extreme psychological evaluation stronger and more knowledgeable than when they entered. None casually suggested improvements to technologies my species spent millennia developing. Humans don't fear challenges, they collect them. They don't submit to superior technology. They study it until they understand how to surpass it. Most importantly, they share everything they learn with their entire species. I am requesting immediate hazard pay for all future human evaluations, mandatory psychological counseling for psychic assessment staff, and urgent review of our technology security protocols. We may have just taught the most dangerous species in the galaxy everything they need to know to make us obsolete. As Roth transmitted his report to the High Council, he watched through his viewport as more human ships approached the station. Each one carried minds optimized for learning, adaptation, and improvement. Each one represented another opportunity for humans to study Confi.